Dricus Du Plessis takes on Khamzat Chimaev this Saturday as the main event of UFC 319. This is Khamzat Chimaev's first title shot against Dricus Du Plessis, who is defending his middleweight crown. So let's get into it. Dricus Du Plessis, he's 31 years old, 6'1", with a 76-inch reach, and 23-2 in his career, so only 2 losses out of 25 fights. Lifelong martial artist, started training judo when he was very young, transitioned into wrestling and then kickboxing later in his teenage years. Very good cardio, unorthodox, kind of goofy at times, but he makes it work. Big for middleweight, very well-rounded. Obviously very good, on an absolute streak in the UFC's middleweight division. Taking on Khamzat Chimaev, kind of the boogeyman of the division, been floating back and forth between welterweight and middleweight. He's also 31, 6'2", with a 75-inch reach, and 14-0 undefeated going into this fight. So both these guys very similar in frames, in their primes, so I think this is going to be a really good fight. Chimaev, he's a southpaw striker, very bouncy, back and forth on the feet, feints well to keep you guessing, really uses his head and shoulder movement to set up his strikes and to set up his takedowns. You never really know if he's throwing a big overhand right or if he's shooting a takedown, and has some of the most explosive takedowns in the game. Goes in 100% for his takedowns. He doesn't really just kind of look for a leg. He's looking to blast W and get you to the ground immediately. Does a really good job of taking the back, riding the back on guys, and getting the finishes. We saw that against Whitaker. He did to Usman for the entirety of the first round, and then seeing that a lot in his early career. So just an extremely strong grappler. This fight comes down to a few key points. For me, it's the striking and the size and the cardio of Dricus Du Plessis, and that's why I'm going to have to go with him. I think he's like a plus 180 underdog, but I'm going to go with Dricus Du Plessis to get this one done. I think that Du Plessis has the better striking. I think Chimaev, I think his takedown threat makes his striking more successful than it should be. We saw him spark Gerald Meerschaert in their fight kind of right off the rip, but other than that in the UFC, he's kind of been more of a grappler type of guy in terms of getting his finishes and really using his grappling to mix up his takedowns. He wasn't really striking or doing that well against Usman in their fight, not really throwing a lot of punches, more kind of just kicking, switching stances, and I think that he got outstruck by Usman in round 3 of that fight, in a fight that Usman took on short notice and moving up in a weight class. And honestly, I think he lost rounds 2 and 3. I don't think he won that fight against Usman. There was some shady stuff with the first round. I mean, you could argue it was a 10-8, I guess, but I mean, he was just kind of controlling, wasn't doing a ton of damage, so I don't think it dictates a 10-8 round. But going tit for tat with the smaller guy in Burns, got dropped twice in my opinion, even though the stats don't show it. Just Burns was having a lot of success, and Burns spent a lot of his career at lightweight, moved up to welterweight, and it's just hard to pick Chimaev from a striking standpoint when he's having trouble with guys that I think are lesser strikers than Dricus Du Plessis, and also much smaller, much older as well. He fought those guys when they were in their mid to late 30s. Dricus Du Plessis still in the middle of his prime. Dricus Du Plessis as well, he, like I said, he's a big dude for middleweight. Big dude, really good cardio. Sometimes he looks like he's tired, but he really pushes through and still fights through whatever cardio concerns he has or whatever. If he's getting tired, he seems to always be able to push through, especially since he got his nose fixed. And I just don't think Chimaev is a 5-round fighter. He's never been 5 rounds. We've seen him start to kind of slow down after that initial explosion in rounds 1 and 2. If he can't get the finish, he kind of slows down and then gets a little sloppy, kind of struggles through the rest of the fight, and kind of ekes out wins. Against Usman, against Burns, kind of eked out decision wins in those fights where his opponents had a lot of success and had a lot of good moments against him. And I think the judges kind of deferred to Chimaev a little bit in those fights. I just don't think Chimaev will be able to handle the size, the physicality, the pace of Dricus Du Plessis. Like I said, he's only been 3 rounds, starts to slow down. Dricus Du Plessis, he's been in many 5-round fights. He knows how to pace himself. He knows how to kind of weather a storm and really get through 5 hard rounds, winning rounds to getting a decision. I just see kind of Chimaev, round 3, end of round 2, round 3, getting a little sloppy, starting to slow down a little bit, not really having as much oomph on his takedowns. We saw that in the Usman and Burns fight. He was kind of just falling on his face, looking to grab ankles versus really exploding through his double legs. And he's manhandled welterweights. You know, like he had a lot of success against Burns, Jingyang Lee, like Kevin Holland, Usman, even Whitaker. His last win against Whitaker. Whitaker was initially a welterweight. He moved up to middleweight, and he's kind of on the smaller side of middleweight. And that performance back against Whitaker, you know, Whitaker hasn't looked the best as of late. You know, when it happened, we thought that was a great performance, but, you know, just saw him not looking the best against Ranier de Ridder. He was beat by Dricus Du Plessis before that, you know, almost got finished by Paulo Costa. I just don't think it's as top tier of a win as we think it was. And then had a back and forth war with Gilbert Burns, who is highly skilled, but he's on the older side. Smaller. You know, the closest thing that Chimaev has fought to like an actual middleweight in the UFC is Gerald Meerschaert, who, you know, not really the best striker, very good grappler. Just he's kind of middle of the road. He's kind of a gatekeeper in the middleweight division. He got him out of there. Yeah, it was impressive, but I just don't feel like we've seen him really tested against a legit big, filled out middleweight. Which also makes me wonder, like, why is he getting this title shot when he's been kind of just bouncing back and forth? Hasn't been the most active guy. 8 fights in 5 years in the UFC, getting a title shot in middleweight. But I just don't think he's faced the competition or shown me that he can beat someone like Dricus Du Plessis, who, you know, is very well-rounded, very good, obviously. I don't know. I think Dricus Du Plessis wrestles with Chimaev, defends the back take, and just kind of makes Chimaev work. I wouldn't be surprised if he even initiates the wrestling to make him work and kind of open up his striking later on, get Chimaev a little bit tired. I just think he taxes Chimaev's gas tank until like the end of round 2, into round 3, and then starts putting it on him. I think he wears him down and gets probably a 4th or 5th round TKO finish. You know, Dricus Du Plessis, he's got that dog in him. He's willing to do whatever it takes to win, regardless of how it works. You know, people make fun of his goofy style and making things weird, but it's effective, and he makes it work. And he's just, I think he's got that particular build, size, skill set to where there's no major holes in his game. You know, he's got a good chin. He's a good wrestler. I think that Chimaev, you know, obviously Chimaev's going to get him to the ground. He's going to out-wrestle him at times, but I think Dricus Du Plessis is skilled enough to threaten there, to defend, to go tit for tat with Chimaev in the wrestling department, to kind of get him tired to where he's not really going to want to keep shooting and, you know, getting into these grappling sessions. And I think that's when Dricus Du Plessis is going to take over on the feet. Chimaev gets a little bit sloppy, throws big overhand rights, he leaves openings. He's been dropped by smaller, less powerful guys than Dricus Du Plessis, so I see Du Plessis taking him into the deep waters, getting him tired, keeping it on the feet, and getting the TKO finish in later rounds, 4 or 5. Thanks.